My boyfriend swore he was over his ex, but when she showed up pregnant, he proposed to her instead of me. Now he wants to come back after finding out the truth. Love had always been complicated for me, but with Derek, it felt different. From the moment we met, there was an undeniable connection that seemed to promise a future full of joy and shared dreams. We were inseparable, spending every free moment together, talking about everything and nothing, and making plans for a life we both wanted. Our relationship was blissful. Derek was attentive, kind, and always knew how to make me laugh, even on my worst days. It felt like I had finally found someone who understood me, flaws and all, and loved me unconditionally. Our weekends were filled with spontaneous road trips, cozy movie nights, and cooking disasters that always ended in laughter. He was my best friend and my partner, and I couldn't have been happier. But then, out of nowhere, Hannah showed up. Derek's ex-girlfriend was a name I'd heard in passing, a ghost from his past that he assured me was long forgotten. She was beautiful, with an air of confidence that made me feel small in comparison. When I first saw her, standing at Derek's doorstep with tears in her eyes and a hand on her slightly protruding belly, my heart sank. "I need to talk to Derek," she said, her voice trembling. Derek, who had been in the kitchen preparing our dinner, came to the door. The colour drained from his face when he saw her. I watched in stunned silence as they spoke in hushed tones, their conversation punctuated by Hannah's sobs. Derek finally turned to me, his eyes filled with a mixture of shock and confusion. "Hannah says she's pregnant," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. The words hung in the air like a dark cloud, suffocating the happiness we had built. I felt a cold chill run down my spine as the reality of the situation began to sink in. Derek's ex-girlfriend was pregnant, and my world was about to change in ways I couldn't have imagined. Over the next few weeks, the tension between Derek and me grew palpable. Hannah's presence loomed over us like a shadow, casting doubt on everything we had shared. Derek tried to reassure me that his feelings for me hadn't changed, but the uncertainty in his eyes told a different story. He spent more and more time with Hannah, attending doctor's appointments and discussing plans for the future. Each time he left to see her, a piece of my heart broke a little more. I tried to be supportive, to understand the gravity of the situation. After all, if Hannah was truly carrying Derek's child, he had a responsibility to be there for her and the baby. But the fear of losing him to his past gnawed at my soul, and I found myself growing increasingly resentful and anxious. One evening, as we sat in the living room in a strained silence, Derek finally spoke the words I had been dreading. "I think I need to marry her," he said, his voice heavy with resignation. I stared at him, my mind reeling. "What? Derek, you can't be serious. What about us?" "It's not about what I want," he said, his eyes avoiding mine. "It's about doing the right thing for the baby, Hannah and I. We have a history. I owe it to her and to the child to try and make things right." The pain in my chest was unbearable. I felt betrayed, discarded, like everything we had meant nothing in the face of his past mistakes. I wanted to scream, to beg him to stay, but I knew it wouldn't change anything. Derek had made up his mind. With tears streaming down my face, I stood up and walked out of the room, leaving behind the man I thought I would spend my life with. The sound of the door closing behind me felt like the end of a chapter, a bitter conclusion to a love story that had promised so much but delivered only heartache. As I lay in bed that night, the weight of my grief pressing down on me, I realized that I had to find a way to move on. Derek was choosing a path that didn't include me, and I had to accept that. But accepting it didn't make it hurt any less. The days that followed were a blur of pain and confusion. I moved out of Derek's apartment and into a small place of my own, trying to piece together the fragments of my shattered heart. The silence was deafening, a constant reminder of the life I had lost. I busied myself with work and mundane tasks, anything to keep my mind from drifting back to Derek and the woman who had torn us apart. My friends and family rallied around me, offering support and advice, though their words often conflicted. Some told me to fight for Derek, to remind him of our love and convince him to stay. Others urged me to cut him out of my life completely, to move on and find someone who would choose me without hesitation. I didn't know what to do. I felt adrift, lost in a sea of emotions that threatened to pull me under. One evening, as I sat on my new couch surrounded by unpacked boxes, my phone buzzed with a message from Derek. My heart ached just seeing his name. "I miss you. Can we talk?" the message read. I stared at the screen, my emotions a tangled mess of hope and anger. Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet him. We arranged to meet at a small coffee shop we used to frequent, a place filled with memories of happier times. When I walked in, Derek was already there, sitting at a corner table. He looked tired, the weight of his decisions evident in the dark circles under his eyes. He stood as I approached, his expression a mix of regret and desperation. "I'm sorry," he said as soon as I sat down. "I never wanted to hurt you." I took a deep breath, trying to steady my racing heart. "Then why did you? Why did you choose her over me?" Derek sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I thought I was doing the right thing, Hannah. She made me believe it was the only way to make things right, but I can't stop thinking about you. I miss you every day." His words were like a knife to my heart. I had dreamed of hearing him say those things, but now that he was, it felt like too little, too late. "You made your choice, Derek. You chose her." "I know," he said, his voice breaking, "and I regret it every single day. I wish I could take it back, but I can't. I don't know what to do." I shook my head, tears welling up in my eyes. "You can't just waltz back into my life and expect everything to be okay. You broke my heart, Derek. You left me for someone else." He reached across the table, taking my hand in his. "I know I did, and I'm so, so sorry. I was scared and I made a terrible mistake. But I love you. I never stopped loving you." I pulled my hand away, the pain too raw to let him touch me. "Love isn't supposed to hurt like this. You need to figure out what you really want, Derek. Because I can't go through this again." We sat in silence for a few moments, the weight of our shared history pressing down on us. Finally, Derek nodded, his eyes filled with sorrow. "You're right. I need to sort things out. But please don't give up on us. Give me a chance to make things right." I left the coffee shop with a heavy heart, unsure of what the future held. Derek's words haunted me, but I knew I couldn't let him back into my life without some certainty. I had to protect myself, to heal from the wounds he had inflicted. In the following weeks, I threw myself into rebuilding my life. I took up painting, something I had always wanted to try but never had the time for. It became my therapy, a way to express the emotions I couldn't put into words. I also reconnected with old friends, finding comfort in their unwavering support. One afternoon, while browsing a local art supply store, I ran into an old acquaintance from college named Mark. He was kind and attentive, and his presence was a welcome distraction from the turmoil Derek had left behind. We started spending time together, and slowly I began to feel a flicker of happiness returning. But just as I was starting to move on, Derek's shadow loomed once again. He continued to reach out, leaving voicemails and sending messages, pleading for another chance. It was clear he was struggling with his decision, and while part of me longed to give in, another part remained resolute. I needed to be sure that his feelings were genuine and not just a reaction to the mess he had created. Then, one evening, Mark and I were out for dinner when Derek walked into the restaurant. Our eyes met, and the pain of our separation came rushing back. He looked at me, then at Mark, and I could see the realization in his eyes. He knew he was losing me, and it seemed to push him over the edge. After that night, Derek's calls became more frequent, his messages more desperate. He begged me to meet him one last time, to hear him out. Torn between my old feelings and my new life, I agreed, hoping for some closure. As I waited for him at the park where we had shared so many memories, I couldn't help but wonder if this meeting would finally bring the resolution I needed. Would Derek prove that he had truly changed? Or would it be another chapter in the saga of heartbreak he had written in my life? As I sat on the bench at the park, watching the leaves flutter in the evening breeze, my mind raced with conflicting thoughts and emotions. I wondered what Derek could possibly say that would change the painful reality he had created. Every moment spent waiting felt like an eternity, but finally, I saw him approaching. Derek looked different, as though the weight of his decisions had taken a visible toll. He walked slowly, his eyes never leaving mine. When he reached the bench, he hesitated before sitting down beside me, leaving a respectful distance between us. "Thank you for meeting me," he began, his voice filled with genuine remorse. "I know I don't deserve your time, but there's something I need to tell you." I nodded, my heart pounding in my chest. "Go ahead, Derek, I'm listening." He took a deep breath, looking down at his hands. "Hannah lied about everything. She was never pregnant. She made it all up to get me back." The words hung in the air, heavy with the implications of what he had just said. I felt a mix of shock, anger, and a strange sense of relief. "What? How did you find out?" Derek ran a hand through his hair, frustration evident in his every movement. I started noticing inconsistencies in her stories. She refused to go to any of the doctor's appointments I tried to set up. When I pressed her for details, she finally broke down and admitted it was all a lie. She said she did it because she couldn't stand the thought of losing me. I felt a surge of anger towards Hannah, but even more so towards Derek for believing her so easily. "So you left me, broke my heart, all because of a lie. How could you not see through her?" "I was scared," Derek admitted, his voice breaking. "I thought I was doing the right thing. I didn't want to abandon my child like my father did to me. I thought I was protecting an innocent life." His confession hit me hard. I knew about Derek's troubled relationship with his father and how deeply it affected him, but it didn't excuse what he had done. "You should have trusted me. You should have trusted us." "I know," he said, tears welling up in his eyes, "and I am so sorry. I see now how wrong I was. I let my fear and guilt drive me to make the worst decision of my life. I hurt you in the process, and I can never forgive myself for that." I looked at him, the man I had once loved so deeply, now sitting before me in pieces. Part of me wanted to comfort him, to take away his pain, but I knew I couldn't ignore the hurt he had caused me. "Derek, I can't just forget what happened. You broke my trust in the worst possible way." "I understand," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I don't expect you to forgive me overnight, but please give me a chance to make things right. I want to prove to you that I've changed, that I can be the man you deserve." I sighed, my emotions a whirlwind of confusion. "You need to understand that it's not that simple. You shattered my heart, and it's taken everything I have to start putting the pieces back together. I'm seeing someone new, and I'm trying to move on." Derek's face fell at the mention of Mark, but he nodded in acceptance. "I get it. And if you're happy with him, I won't stand in the way. But if there's even a small part of you that still loves me, please, let me try to earn your trust back." The sincerity in his eyes was undeniable, but I knew I had to protect myself. "Derek, I need time. I can't promise anything right now. You have a lot to prove, not just to me, but to yourself." He nodded, a glimmer of hope in his eyes. "I understand. I'll wait as long as it takes." We sat in silence for a few moments, the weight of our conversation settling between us. Finally, I stood up, needing to escape the intensity of the moment. "I need to go." Derek stood as well, his gaze unwavering. "Thank you for hearing me out. I hope someday we can find a way back to each other." As I walked away, I felt a strange sense of closure. Derek had admitted his mistakes, but it was up to me to decide whether I could ever truly forgive him. For now, I needed to focus on myself and the new life I was building. Over the next few weeks, I continued to see Mark. He was kind, patient, and understanding of the complicated emotions I was dealing with. He never pressured me to move faster than I was comfortable with, and I appreciated his respect for my healing process. But Derek's revelation lingered in the back of my mind. I couldn't ignore the fact that he had been manipulated by someone he once loved and had tried, in his misguided way, to do the right thing. It didn't excuse his actions, but it added a layer of complexity to the situation. One afternoon, as Mark and I were enjoying a quiet day at the beach, he turned to me, his eyes filled with concern. "You've been quiet today. Is everything okay?" I took a deep breath, knowing I needed to be honest with him. "It's Derek. He told me that Hannah lied about being pregnant. It's been weighing on me." Mark nodded, his expression understanding. "I figured it might be something like that. How do you feel about it?" "I'm not sure," I admitted. "Part of me is still so angry at him for what he did. But another part of me understands why he acted the way he did. It's confusing. Mark reached out, taking my hand in his. I can't tell you what to do, but I can tell you that I'll support whatever decision you make. Your happiness is what matters most to me. His words touched my heart, and I realized just how lucky I was to have found someone like him. But I also knew that I needed to confront my feelings for Derek once and for all. I had to find out if there was a future for us, or if I needed to let him go completely. As I sat on the sand, watching the waves crash against the shore, I made a decision. I would meet with Derek one last time, to see if there was anything left to salvage. It was a risk, but it was one I needed to take for my own peace of mind. I called Derek and arranged to meet him at the park once again. This time, I hoped, would be different. It would be the moment of truth, where I would finally decide the path my heart would take. As I walked to the park for my final meeting with Derek, my heart felt heavy but resolute. The decision to confront my feelings and seek closure was not easy, but it was necessary. I needed to face Derek and determine if our love was worth fighting for, or if it was time to let go. When I arrived, Derek was already there, sitting on the same bench where we had shared so many moments. He looked up as I approached, his expression hopeful but wary. "Hi," he said softly, standing up as I reached him. "Hi, Derek," I replied, taking a seat. He sat down beside me, and we both took a moment to gather our thoughts. "I want to start by saying thank you for giving me another chance to talk," Derek began. "I know I've hurt you deeply, and I don't expect forgiveness to come easily. But I need you to know that I am truly sorry for everything." I nodded, appreciating his sincerity. "I believe you, Derek. But it's not just about saying sorry. It's about understanding the consequences of your actions and proving that you've changed." "I know," he said earnestly. "I've been doing a lot of soul-searching these past few weeks. I've realized that I let my fear and guilt control my decisions. I should have trusted you and our relationship instead of letting Hannah manipulate me. I know that now." His admission struck a chord within me. I could see the pain in his eyes, the regret etched into his features. But I needed more than words. "Derek, I need to know why you think things would be different now. What makes you believe you won't fall into the same trap again?" He took a deep breath, his gaze never leaving mine. "I've started seeing a therapist to work through my issues with my past and my tendency to let fear dictate my actions. I'm learning to trust myself and to communicate better. I don't want to be the man who hurt you. I want to be better." His honesty and willingness to seek help touched me deeply. It showed that he was serious about changing, about becoming a better person, but I still had my doubts. "I appreciate that you're working on yourself, Derek. I really do. But I'm scared that I'll open my heart to you again, only to have it shattered once more." He reached out, gently taking my hand. "I understand your fear, and I know I have a lot to prove. But I'm willing to do whatever it takes to earn your trust back. Even if it takes years, I won't give up." I looked at our joined hands, feeling the warmth of his touch, and I knew I had a choice to make. I could either continue to live in fear and pain, or I could take a leap of faith and give him a chance to make things right. It was a terrifying decision, but one that I felt I needed to make for my own peace of mind. "Derek, I need time," I said, meeting his eyes. "Time to see if your actions match your words. I'm not promising anything, but I'm willing to take things slowly and see where this goes." A look of relief and gratitude washed over his face. "Thank you, really. I'll do everything I can to show you that I'm serious about this." As we stood up and walked through the park, I felt a strange sense of hope mixed with caution. Rebuilding our relationship wouldn't be easy, but I was willing to try, to see if the love we once shared could be rekindled. Over the next few months, Derek and I took things slowly. We went on casual dates, spent time talking about our feelings, and worked on rebuilding the trust that had been broken. Derek continued his therapy, and I could see the positive changes in him. He was more open, more communicative, and genuinely committed to proving that he had changed. Meanwhile, my relationship with Mark had become complicated. He had been understanding and patient, but he could see that my heart was torn. One evening, as we sat on my couch, he took my hand and said, I can see how much Derek still means to you, and while it hurts, I want you to be happy. If giving him another chance is what you need, then I support you." His selflessness brought tears to my eyes. "Mark, you've been incredible. I don't want to hurt you, but I need to follow my heart and see where this leads with Derek. I hope you understand." "I do," he said softly, "and I hope you find the happiness you deserve, whether it's with him or someone else." With Mark's blessing, I continued to explore my feelings for Derek. Slowly but surely, the walls between us began to crumble, and the love we once shared started to blossom again. There were still moments of doubt and fear, but we faced them together, determined to build a stronger foundation. One evening, as we sat on the same park bench where we had started this journey, Derek turned to me and said, "I know it's been a long road, but I want you to know that I love you more now than ever before. Thank you for giving us another chance." Tears filled my eyes as I smiled at him. "I love you too, Derek. We've been through so much, but I believe in us. I believe we can make this work." And so our journey continued, filled with hope, love, and a renewed commitment to each other. It wasn't a perfect fairy tale, but it was real, and it was ours. To everyone reading this, thank you for following our story. Relationships are never easy, and they require effort, trust, and forgiveness. Have you ever been in a situation where you had to decide whether to give someone a second chance? I'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences.